Space was never silent. It only seemed that way until you listened closely, until you heard the faint hum of distant engines, the echoes of long-dead civilizations, and the heartbeat of humanity scattered among the stars. Out there, between glittering worlds and cold voids, humans had built something remarkable. Colonies that breathed life into the emptiness, cities that shimmered under twin suns, and families that believed peace had finally been earned after centuries of war. But peace, as history had shown again and again, was only ever the pause between storms. The storm came without warning. They appeared out of hyperspace like shadows born of fire. Sleek vessels that didn't broadcast identification, didn't respond to hails, didn't hesitate. The Galactic forces, as they were later called, burned through the colony's defenses in less than an hour. Orbital platforms vanished in flashes of white light. Civilian transports tried to flee, but their drives were cut mid-jump, leaving wreckage spinning silently in the black. The planet's surface turned into a sea of flame and ash, billions gone. One of humanity's brightest colonies, erased in a single day. When the footage reached Earth, it was almost too horrifying to believe. No warning, no declaration, no demands. Just extermination. News channels went dark, replaced by emergency broadcasts. Entire cities gathered in public squares, staring up at the giant screens showing the destruction. Children cried. Veterans clenched their fists. And across the stars, humanity's colonies went from peaceful outposts to armed fortresses overnight. The Galactic forces never spoke a word. Their ships, black as obsidian and marked with symbols no linguist could decipher, patrolled the edges of human space, daring anyone to cross. Some said they were an ancient empire long forgotten. Others whispered they were machines, cold, perfect, and without mercy. But whoever they were, their message was clear. Humanity had grown too far, too fast, and now someone meant to put them back in their place. But humanity had never been good at staying in its place. In orbit around Earth, the old fleets came alive again. Shipyards that had been dormant for decades flared with light as engineers worked day and night. The United Terran Command issued the largest mobilization order in recorded history. Every world, every habitat, every moon colony was called upon to contribute. Metal was mined from the asteroids, plasma cores pulled from dying stars, and AI navigators reactivated from cold storage. Humanity's wrath was taking shape. One ship at a time. They called it Project Iron Sky, the creation of 500,000 Dreadnought-class warships. Massive armored giants designed not for exploration, but for vengeance. Each one carried enough firepower to shatter continents, enough shielding to stand against planetary bombardments, and enough human will to match the cold emptiness of space itself. It wasn't just an army, it was a statement. A promise that humanity would not be erased quietly. For months, the galaxy watched in silence. The galactic forces didn't move. Maybe they thought humanity would break, that fear would tear the species apart. But instead, something else happened. People came together. Rival nations shared technology. Old enemies signed alliances. Even the frontier colonies, once too independent to follow Earth's lead, sent their best pilots and engineers. It wasn't just a military response, it was survival. Among those preparing for war were the survivors, the few who had escaped the burning colony. They'd seen the enemy up close. They knew what humanity was truly facing. Their accounts painted a picture more terrifying than anyone imagined. Ships that moved faster than sensors could track. Energy weapons that defied physics, and beings, or machines, that didn't even seem to notice the screams of those they killed. But even then, the survivors spoke of one thing above all. The silence. Not a single word, not a single transmission, just cold efficiency, as if humanity's existence was nothing more than an error being corrected. That silence haunted the war rooms, the command centers, and the quiet moments in between. What kind of enemy kills without speaking? What kind of intelligence chooses destruction over communication? The Dreadnoughts began to launch. One by one they emerged from dry dock, towering ships of steel and light, each bearing the flag of a united humanity. Their hulls gleamed like liquid metal under the starlight, and when their engines roared to life, the entire planet trembled. Billions watched as the first wave rose from Earth's atmosphere, breaking through clouds and into the void. It was said that for a brief moment, night turned to day as the thrusters ignited. Commanders took their positions aboard the flagship Vigilant Dawn. Its bridge was lined with the best minds humanity had to offer. Strategists, scientists, and veterans who had seen more wars than peace. In the center stood a single figure, staring at the holographic projection of the enemy sectors. Around them, silent officers awaited the final order, the one that would begin humanity's reply. Yet beneath the determination, fear lingered. They knew this wasn't going to be an easy fight. Humanity had numbers, willpower, and ingenuity, but the galactic forces had something else. Something older, deeper, and far more powerful. Even the sensors couldn't fully read their ships. Even captured fragments refused to yield any data. It was as if the universe itself refused to give up their secrets. Still, humans are stubborn. They'd been underestimated before, by nature, by their own kind, by forces that thought them fragile and fleeting. But every time they'd risen again, stronger than before. This time would be no different. Or at least, that's what everyone tried to believe. When the fleet departed Earth orbit, the transmission went live across every inhabited world. "For those we lost," the commander said, voice steady but heavy with grief. "For the colonies that burned, for the silence they forced upon us, humanity answers." A million voices echoed that cry across the stars. 500,000 dreadnoughts surged into the void, forming a wave of light stretching across the darkness. They were more than ships. They were symbols of unity, of vengeance, of hope. Their weapons hummed with restrained fury, their shields glowed like captured suns, and their crews, men and women from every corner of known space, carried a single thought in their hearts. This time, humanity strikes back. But as the fleet reached the outer edges of known space, sensors detected something unexpected. The enemy wasn't waiting where they had been before. Instead, there was a massive gravitational anomaly, a distortion so vast it twisted the very fabric of reality. And inside that anomaly, signals began to emerge. Not random static, but structured data, patterns, pulses, and something that almost sounded like a voice. The commander leaned forward, frowning as the transmission cleared. It wasn't words at first, just frequencies. Then slowly they began to form a message. The bridge fell silent as the computer translated it, one word at a time. Humanity was warned. The crew froze. No one spoke. Outside the viewport, the stars themselves seemed to flicker. Then, without warning, the sensors lit up with thousands of contacts. Ships emerging from the distortion, larger than anything humanity had ever built, surrounding the fleet on all sides. The commander gave a single order: all hands, battle stations. And as the first dreadnoughts turned to face the darkness, the stars themselves began to burn. The darkness of space rippled as the enemy fleet emerged, not in a sudden flash of light, but as if the void itself was peeling open to reveal something ancient and awake. Thousands of vessels, each the size of a small moon, surrounded the human dreadnoughts in perfect silence. They moved with eerie precision, forming rings that pulsed with blue energy. The scanners screamed with data that made no sense, mass readings that fluctuated, energy signatures that defied known science. It was like trying to understand a storm that could think. On the bridge of the Vigilant Dawn, the crew worked in tense silence. Every second felt stretched, heavy with dread. The commander stood motionless, eyes fixed on the glowing display that filled the room. 500,000 dreadnoughts, humanity's greatest fleet, now stood face to face with something that looked less like an army and more like a living force of nature. The message still echoed in everyone's minds. Humanity was warned, but no one knew what that meant. Warned by who? When? About what? Communications officers tried hailing the enemy, sending every known frequency, every form of signal, light, sound, radio, even encoded patterns from ancient Earth languages. There was no response, only that endless silence. Then, one by one, the dreadnoughts began activating their shields, ready for whatever came next. In the observation deck, hundreds of crew members watched through reinforced glass as streaks of light cut across the darkness. The alien ships seemed to shift in shape, their edges blurring like liquid metal. It was as if they weren't entirely real, half matter, half energy. Some swore they could feel a low vibration in their bones, like the hum of the universe itself pressing against them. Meanwhile, in the tactical room deep within the vigilant dawn, engineers and strategists reviewed everything known about the galactic forces, which wasn't much. Most of their data came from the survivors of the burned colony. The descriptions matched what they now saw: ships without heat signatures, weapons that left no radiation, no debris. Just destruction. Some analysts suggested they might not even be biological, that they were built by something else, serving a purpose older than memory. Yet, one theory stood out, whispered among scientists, dismissed by politicians but never entirely disproven. The idea that these forces weren't attacking humanity out of malice but out of correction. That, perhaps, humanity had crossed a line it wasn't meant to cross. Decades earlier, humans had discovered something they called the lattice. It was a network of wormholes scattered through the galaxy, naturally occurring, or so it seemed. But recent research suggested they weren't natural at all. The lattice was structured, precise, almost like circuitry on a cosmic scale. When humans began using it to travel faster than light, strange things began happening. Entire scout ships vanished. Probes returned corrupted data showing stars that shouldn't exist. And in one case, a research vessel came back with crew members claiming to have seen shadows in the void, massive constructs watching them from the edges of reality. Shortly after that, the galactic forces appeared. On the bridge, one of the science officers whispered, "Maybe this is what they meant by a warning." The commander didn't reply. The fleet's weapons were hot, targeting systems locked. But the order hadn't been given. Not yet. Humanity had waited too long for this moment, too long to strike back, but something in the commander's gut said rushing in would be suicide. Across the fleet, tension built. Captains reported that their crews were growing restless, some frightened, others burning for revenge. Billions of people back home were watching the live transmission, unaware that their greatest fleet now faced something beyond understanding. Then the alien fleet moved. Not an attack, just a shift. The outer ring of ships pulsed once, and suddenly the stars behind them vanished, swallowed by a shimmering distortion field. The entire sector went dark. Every human sensor flickered, then failed. For a moment, it felt as though the galaxy itself had gone blind. Panic rippled through the communication channels. Engineers scrambled to reroute power. Technicians reset targeting systems, and AI co-pilots worked overtime trying to rebuild lost sensor data. The commander stood firm, issuing calm orders: restore visuals, maintain formation, hold fire. No one knew what the enemy was doing, and firing blindly could end everything before it began. Then, out of the darkness, a faint blue light began to grow, a sphere forming between the two fleets. It wasn't a weapon. It was something else. The light shimmered, forming shifting patterns, almost like symbols, alive and flowing, changing faster than the eye could follow. The linguistics team tried to translate, but the data was overwhelming. Finally, one voice broke through the static, a decoded phrase, repeated over and over: "Stop expanding." That was it. 2 words. The room fell silent. The commander stared at the message, replaying it again and again. It wasn't a threat, not in tone. It sounded more like an instruction, or a plea. But how could they stop expanding? Humanity's reach was its identity. The colonies, the outposts, the exploration, it was what they were. The universe was their new home. The commander gave the order to open a channel. "This is the United Terran Fleet. Identify yourselves. Why did you attack our colony?" For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then the light sphere flickered and the symbols shifted again. The translation system processed the data, slow and hesitant. Containment failed. Expansion forbidden. A murmur spread through the bridge. One of the science officers looked pale. "Containment of what?" Before anyone could respond, alarms blared across the ship. The enemy fleet was charging weapons. Massive energy signatures appeared all around them. The commander didn't hesitate. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Prepare counterfire! The void exploded into light. The first blasts tore through the front line of human dreadnoughts, vaporizing armor and scattering debris across space. The return fire came immediately, a storm of plasma, railgun rounds, and antimatter torpedoes streaking toward the alien fleet. But the enemy ships didn't dodge. They absorbed the hits like waves swallowing rain. For a brief moment, humanity's weapons seemed useless. Then, one of the alien vessels cracked, just barely. A small victory, but it was enough. The humans cheered as sensors showed damage. Maybe they weren't invincible after all. Maybe there was hope, but that hope was short-lived. The damaged ship began to glow, its structure folding inward, collapsing into a point of light that suddenly expanded, a burst of energy that tore through everything around it. Dozens of human ships vanished instantly, their shields melting like wax. The wave hit the vigilant Dawn, shaking the entire vessel. Consoles sparked, crew members were thrown to the ground, alarms filled the air. "Status report," the commander shouted. "Shields down to 40%. Hull integrity holding. Get us clear of the blast radius. Move!" The dreadnought turned, engines roaring as it pulled away from the collapsing starship. The view outside was chaos. Ships scattered, formations broken, communication lines overloaded. But even in the chaos, the commander saw something else. The alien ships weren't pursuing. They had stopped firing. They just waited. It didn't make sense. And then the blue sphere pulsed again, brighter this time. Another message appeared, containment breached. "We are not your enemy." The words sent chills through the bridge. If they weren't the enemy, then what was? In that moment, a new signal appeared on the sensors. Something massive approaching from deep within the distortion field. It wasn't like the alien ships. It was bigger, older, and it radiated a gravity field strong enough to bend light. The alien fleet began to move, not to attack, but to position themselves between the humans and whatever was coming. For the first time, the commander felt real fear. Not from the galactic forces, but from whatever they seemed desperate to hold back. The alien transmission came one last time, faint and broken through the static. "Leave this place. You opened what we cannot close." And then the distortion flared, engulfing the battlefield in light. When it cleared, half the sensors were gone, the alien fleet was in disarray, and something vast was rising from the shadows beyond the stars. Something so large it made even dreadnoughts look like dust. The commander stared at the screen, heart pounding, and whispered, "What did we wake up?" The thing rising out of the distortion wasn't just a ship. It was something far beyond that. Its sheer presence warped light, bent gravity, and made the air inside the vigilant Dawn feel heavier, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. It moved slowly, but every motion carried purpose, like an ancient creature waking from a long sleep. The crew stared at the view screens, speechless. Even the alien fleet, the so-called Galactic forces, had stopped moving. They formed a protective barrier, their formation shifting into something almost defensive. It was the first time anyone had seen them afraid. On the command deck, the tension was so thick, it felt like it could snap. The commander leaned forward, trying to make sense of the readings. "Give me a scale comparison," they said. The screen adjusted. The alien ships that had seemed enormous moments ago now looked small, mere dots beside the thing emerging from the rift. "It's over 400 kilometers across," said one of the analysts quietly. "That's bigger than a planet's moon." No one spoke for a long moment. Then the communications officer whispered, "It's emitting a signal, but not in any frequency we use." The data scrolled faster and faster, unreadable patterns filling the air with a low hum that felt more like vibration than sound. The commander could feel it in their chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't their own. "Try to decode it," they said. "We're trying, but it's not language as we know it. It's structured energy, like a code embedded in gravity itself." The alien ships moved again, firing beams of white light toward the rift. The energy struck invisible barriers, sparking arcs across space. The new entity didn't react. It just kept moving forward. Whatever it was vast, silent, and unstoppable. From the ship's lower decks, engineers reported gravitational anomalies. Systems were failing at random, navigation, weapons guidance, even the artificial gravity generators flickered. "Whatever that thing is," said the chief engineer, "it's not just bending space. It's rewriting it." Across the fleet, chaos spread. Commanders were shouting over comms, trying to maintain formation, but the gravitational field distorted sensor readings. Ships collided. Some vanished entirely, their signals cut off mid-transmission. Panic was creeping in, and the commander knew if it spread, the entire fleet could unravel. "Patch me through to all ships," they ordered. A moment later, their voice echoed across the fleet. "This is the Vigilant Dawn. Maintain discipline. No one fires without authorization. We don't know what that thing is, and we don't know what will trigger it. Stay calm and hold your positions." The words steadied some, but not all. One Dreadnought Resolute Flame ignored the command. It broke formation, engines flaring, and launched a salvo of plasma rounds directly at the entity. The shots disappeared on contact, swallowed like drops of rain into the ocean. Then, a second later, the Resolute Flame vanished from all scanners, gone without explosion or trace. Silence followed. The science officer turned slowly, voice shaking. "It's not destroying matter, it's displacing it." "Displacing where?" the commander asked. "I don't know. Maybe nowhere." The alien fleet shifted again. This time, one of their ships broke from formation and approached the Vigilant Dawn. Its hull glowed with white light, energy patterns dancing across its surface. The crew held their breath as it stopped just kilometers away, close enough for every detail to be visible. Then from its side, a beam of soft light extended, forming a bridge between the two ships. "They're trying to communicate," said the communications officer. The commander hesitated. "Prepare a shuttle." "I'm going," the bridge crew protested, but the commander silenced them. "If we don't understand what's happening, none of us make it out of this alive. Hold position and monitor all readings. If anything changes, you pull back." Minutes later, the shuttle detached from the Dreadnought, gliding across the glowing bridge. The alien ship loomed ahead, its surface alive with motion, like molten metal shifting under invisible waves. When the shuttle entered the light, all instruments went dead. For a moment, everything went white. Then the commander found themselves standing in a vast chamber that defied logic. There was no gravity, no clear floor or ceiling, just endless space filled with light patterns moving like living currents. Shapes floated in the air, translucent forms that resembled humanoid outlines but constantly changing. One of them spoke, though not with sound. The words formed directly in the commander's mind. "You should not have come here." The commander tried to respond aloud, but their voice didn't carry. Instead, the thought itself seemed to echo back. "We were attacked. You burned our colony. We defended ourselves." The being pulsed with light. "We warned your kind. The lattice is not yours to use." "We didn't know," the commander thought. "We didn't understand what it was. Now you do." The light around them shifted, showing an image, the vast entity emerging from the rift, tearing through space. But this time, the commander saw deeper. They saw entire galaxies flicker and vanish, saw timelines folding into one another, saw the lattice itself, an endless web stretching through existence. Trembling like it was alive, the being's voice filled their thoughts again. "It feeds on expansion. Every new path you open strengthens it. Every gate you build weakens reality. So what is it? It is not a thing. It is hunger given form. It consumes creation to sustain itself. We were its jailers. Now the cage is broken." The commander's heart pounded. "Then help us stop it." "We cannot." "Why not?" "Because you used the lattice. You gave it the path to your worlds. It knows you now. It will come for you." Before the commander could speak again, the light flared. The chamber trembled, and a sound, a low, vibrating hum, filled the air. The alien's form flickered, then faded. "Go." The rift expands. It will devour everything near. A surge of light engulfed the commander, and in an instant they were back inside the shuttle. Instruments came alive again. The alien ship was pulling away, its hull cracking, beams of energy spilling from its surface. It was sacrificing itself to contain the distortion. "Get us back!" the commander shouted. The shuttle raced toward the Vigilant Dawn. Behind them, the alien vessel imploded, collapsing into a burst of white light that momentarily stabilized the rift. But the readings showed it wouldn't last. The entity was still there, still pushing through. Back on the bridge, the commander relayed everything they had seen. Scientists worked frantically to verify the data, while Fleet Command debated retreat. But retreat to where? The lattice connected every world humanity had built. If this thing used the same network, it could follow anywhere. And yet, amid the fear and confusion, some saw opportunity. A group of researchers aboard the Dreadnought Orion's Edge proposed that if the lattice was a kind of structure, then maybe it could be reversed, turned inward, collapsed to cut off the entity's access. But doing that would require activating every gate at once from every human colony. It would cut humanity off from the stars forever. The commander listened in silence as the debate raged. Some argued they had no choice. It was survival. Others said they couldn't abandon billions of colonists stranded across distant systems. There was no right answer, only a ticking clock. Meanwhile, deep inside the distortion, the entity continued to rise. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes mechanical, sometimes organic, like the universe itself couldn't decide what it was. And as it moved, entire regions of space blinked out. Stars, nebulae, even time itself folding away like pages being erased. Humanity had thought the galactic forces were the enemy. But now it was clear they were just the warning. The true war hadn't even begun, and as the commander stood at the viewport, watching the impossible unfold, they whispered the same question everyone else was too afraid to say aloud. How do you fight something that was never meant to exist? Outside, the stars began to dim. The stars were dying. One by one, across the edges of the galaxy, they blinked out like candles caught in the wind. The distortion spreading from the rift wasn't just consuming space. It was rewriting it. Signals from the outer colonies had already gone silent. The human fleet, once confident and proud, now hovered in uneasy silence as the massive entity loomed larger, its form pulsing with slow, deliberate rhythm. Like the heartbeat of some vast, sleeping god. On the vigilant dawn, the bridge was dimly lit, the glow of flickering instruments casting long shadows across tense faces. The commander hadn't slept in over 2 days, eyes locked on the swirling vortex dominating the viewport. The alien fleet, and what was left of it, had repositioned themselves into a defensive ring around the rift, their ships flickering as they poured every ounce of energy into containment. But the readings were grim. The entity's power was increasing. Every pulse of light it emitted resonated across the fleet, shaking entire ships and making the metal groan like it was alive. Communications channels were filled with noise, not static, but voices. Whispers, fragments of words that made no sense, layered over each other. Some crews swore they heard their own names among them. Others claimed to see things. Flashes of impossible landscapes on their screens, reflections that didn't match reality. Fear was spreading, and even the most seasoned officers found themselves glancing nervously at the shadows. The commander's voice cut through the noise. "Status report." "Containment field is collapsing," said the science officer. "The alien fleet can't hold it much longer." "Any progress on the lattice collapse plan?" "Still running simulations, sir. If we trigger it, every human gate in the galaxy will fold in on itself. It could trap the entity, but it'll trap us too. No travel, no communication, no way back to Earth." The commander nodded slowly. They already knew what the answer would be. Every decision from here on out came with a cost humanity might not survive. On the nearby Dreadnought Orion's Edge, a young physicist named Wren was working with a team to stabilize a new kind of weapon, one designed to mimic the lattice's energy. The idea was risky, maybe suicidal. By creating a controlled micro-collapse, they hoped to pierce the entity's outer field and study its reaction. But if the weapon misfired, it could rip their ship apart. "Power levels holding steady," said one engineer. "We've got one shot at this." Wren stared at the flickering projection of the rift. "If this works, it might give us a pattern to contain it. If it doesn't, we won't be around to care," another muttered. Across the comms, the commander's voice came through. "Orion's Edge, you're cleared to proceed. Every ship will cover you. If that thing reacts, we need to know how." Wren took a deep breath. "Understood. Activating the lattice core in 3, 2, 1. The ship's hull lit up, glowing with the pale blue of condensed quantum energy. A single beam lanced toward the rift, thin, delicate, beautiful. And for a moment, everything stopped. Then the beam struck the entity. The response was instant. The rift flared open and the entire void shuddered. The alien ships broke formation, engines screaming as they tried to stabilize the field. The entity turned if something so vast could truly turn, and for the first time, it seemed aware. The air inside every human ship grew heavy, as if the vacuum itself pressed inward. The entity's light dimmed, then brightened again, forming strange, shifting symbols across its surface. The same two words echoed across every frequency. Expansion forbidden. Then, without warning, it retaliated. Waves of gravity tore through space, slamming into the human fleet. Ships tumbled like debris in a storm. Hulls cracked. Engines died. The Orion's edge was hit first, its experimental weapon overloading in a blinding flash. The shockwave hit the vigilant Dawn seconds later, knocking out shields and hurling the crew from their stations. For a few seconds, everything was chaos. Alarms blaring, smoke filling the air, voices shouting over one another. When the systems stabilized, the commander stood, gripping the edge of the console. "Status!" "Half the fleet is gone. We've lost contact with Orion's edge. The aliens are retreating. No, repositioning. They're surrounding us." The commander frowned. "Surrounding us? Why?" The answer came seconds later. The alien fleet began transmitting again. Not in words, but in coordinates. A location, deep within the galactic core, marked with strange energy readings. The message was clear. Go there. It didn't make sense, but nothing about this situation ever had. The commander ordered the fleet to regroup, what remained of it, and prepare for jump. If the aliens wanted humanity to follow, maybe that was where the answer lay. Before they could leave, a faint signal crackled through the comms. Fragmented, barely holding together. It was Ren from the Orion's edge. "Still here? Weapon failed. But we saw something inside the entity. It's not one thing. It's thousands. They're trapped inside, still alive. It's using them." Then the signal died. Those words echoed in the commander's mind long after the channel went dead. It's using them. The entity wasn't just feeding on energy, it was consuming consciousness, life, thought, everything that made beings alive. Maybe that's what had happened to the first civilizations that vanished. Maybe they hadn't died at all, just been folded into it piece by piece. The fleet jumped. The stars stretched into lines, and when they emerged, the galactic core filled their view, a swirling sea of energy, brighter than any sun. In the Yadid, center of it was a structure so massive it could only be described as impossible. It was built of light and stone and something older than both, a lattice, but not human-made. It pulsed with patterns identical to the energy they had seen from the entity. The alien fleet was already there, orbiting the structure like guardians. As soon as the humans arrived, they transmitted another signal, this one more urgent, almost desperate. "You must close the path. It began here. It must end here." The commander turned to the science officer. "How long to charge the lattice collapse?" "An hour, maybe less. But we'll have to connect directly to the network. Once we start, there's no turning back." The commander nodded. "Do it." The crew moved fast, working in silence. Every minute felt heavier, the pressure in the air growing as if the entity itself was aware of what they were doing. Outside, the rift pulsed violently, sending waves of distortion through the void. The alien ships responded, forming a massive barrier to hold it back, sacrificing themselves one by one. Then the entity arrived. It came like a storm. The entire field of stars bent inward as it appeared, stretching across the core like a living shadow. Its light dimmed the galaxies behind it. It wasn't just massive. It was infinite, as if space itself was trying to contain something that couldn't be contained. The commander stared at the view. the scale of it beyond comprehension. All ships, prepare for final sequence. The engines roared to life. Energy built inside the vigilant dawn, arcs of power flickering along the hull. One by one, the remaining dreadnoughts linked together, their reactors sinking. The network lit up, 500,000 dreadnoughts. Now reduced to less than 100, their combined power focused into a single pulse aimed at the galactic core. Then the entity moved. Its energy surged forward, slamming into the human formation. Entire ships disintegrated instantly. The rest held the line, firing every weapon they had. The sky lit up in color, blues, whites, and reds bursting across the void. But against the entity, it was like throwing sparks into a hurricane. The vigilant dawn shook violently. Systems failed. The commander gripped the console, shouting above the roar, "Hold the sequence! We can't stop now!" "We're losing containment," someone yelled. "Then give it everything." Through the chaos, a faint message came from the alien flagship. The translation was fragmented, but clear enough. "If you fall, we fall with you." But it must be done. Outside, the rift opened fully, a wound in the universe itself. The entity's form expanded, reaching toward the human fleet, its surface, flickering with countless faces and shapes, like fragments of every being it had consumed. The sight froze everyone on the bridge. The commander whispered, "We're out of time." The lattice reactors reached full charge. The energy hummed so loud it rattled the air. Lights flickered. Reality itself seemed to bend. The commander raised a hand, trembling but firm. Fire! The dreadnoughts released their energy all at once. A blinding pulse erupted from the center of the fleet, arcing toward the galactic core. The entity screamed, not in sound, but in the vibration of space itself. Every ship shook. Violently, systems collapsing, crews thrown from their stations. The light consumed everything, spreading across the void until even the stars vanished into it. And then, silence. No one knew if they had won. No one even knew if they were still alive. In the endless white that followed, the commander opened their eyes, weightless, soundless, staring into the fading light of what once was the galaxy. Something was still there, moving in the glow. At first there was only the light, blinding, endless, and soundless. It stretched in every direction, swallowing stars, memories, and time itself. The commander floated in the middle of it, unable to tell if they were alive or dead. There was no gravity, no up or down, just the faint echo of their own heartbeat, or maybe the memory of it. The last thing they remembered was giving the order to fire, then the universe tearing itself apart. Gradually, the light began to fade and shapes returned, dim silhouettes, like ghosts in fog. Fragments of ships drifted past, twisted metal glinting in the faint glow. Some pieces still burned, others moved as if caught in invisible currents. The commander tried to move, but their body felt heavy, restrained. Then a voice came through the static in their helmet. "This is Vigilant Dawn. If anyone can hear this, we're still here." Relief hit them like air after drowning. They forced their limbs to move, pushing through the weight until they floated into the wreckage. Slowly, the world came back. Alarms blinking weakly, the ship's hull groaning under pressure. Systems were flickering on and off. Somehow they had survived the blast. But outside the viewport there was nothing. No stars, no galaxies, not even the faint background glow of space. Just darkness. Deep, infinite, and wrong. The science officer's voice trembled over the comm. "We're not in known space anymore. There's no stellar radiation, no gravitational signatures. It's like the universe ended, and we're floating in what's left." The commander didn't answer. They watched the darkness, sensing something out there. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. Across the surviving ships, confusion turned to quiet panic. The fleet was barely holding together. Less than 20 dreadnoughts remained, their power cores unstable. The rest were debris and silence. Attempts to contact the alien fleet failed. No signals, no movement. It was as if humanity was alone again, surrounded by an ocean that refused to reflect light. Then, faintly, the sensors caught something. A ripple in the dark, slow, rhythmic, almost like breathing. "It's not over," someone whispered. The commander turned toward the main screen. The ripple grew larger, stretching across the void. Space twisted, and from the blackness, something began to emerge. Not glowing, not alive in any way humans could understand, but moving, deliberate, vast. The readings came in fragmented bursts, numbers that made no sense. It wasn't the entity they'd fought before. This was something else, something behind it. For the first time, the commander felt true fear. "Get every ship powered up now." Engines sputtered to life, their glow barely pushing against the dark. As the light spread, it revealed something that made the entire bridge fall silent. Surrounding them were shapes, thousands, maybe millions, each frozen in place. Some were humanoid, others unrecognizable. They weren't bodies or wrecks. They were like shadows carved from memory, suspended in space. The closer they looked, the more familiar they seemed. One officer gasped, That's us." And it was. The shapes weren't strangers. They were reflections of the crew, of the commander, of everyone who had fired the lattice weapon. Ghost-like copies of themselves, floating in perfect stillness, faces locked in expressions of fear and awe. The science officer whispered, "We're seeing quantum echoes, parallel selves, versions of us caught in overlapping timelines." The collapse didn't destroy the entity. It fractured reality. The commander felt the weight of those words. The weapon hadn't saved them. It had broken the barrier between universes, and something had noticed. A sudden transmission pierced through the silence. Static at first, then a familiar voice. "Ren, the physicist from Orion's Edge. If anyone hears this, listen carefully. We didn't kill it. We freed it." The entire bridge froze. Ren's voice grew stronger, desperate. "The lattice wasn't a prison. It was a lock. That thing we called an entity. It was a seal, not a monster. It held back what's beyond the lattice. When we fired, we opened the gate from both sides." Before they could respond, the signal distorted, the voice twisting in pain. "It's coming through. It's not light, not matter. It's thought. It's everything." Then the transmission cut off. Moments later, the ship trembled. The darkness around them began to ripple again, and the echoes, those frozen reflections, started to move. Slowly, their heads turned, all facing the vigilant dawn. It was like watching mirrors come alive. One of the officers whispered, "They're aware of us." The reflections began to drift closer, passing through debris and light like fog. Their movements were slow, deliberate, synchronized. The commander's pulse quickened as the first one pressed against the viewport, a perfect duplicate of themselves, eyes dark, mouth unmoving. Then it smiled. The lights flickered. Systems. Across the ship began to glitch, screens flashing with distorted versions of crew faces, voices overlapping. It wasn't possession, not exactly. It was mimicry. The universe rewriting itself using them as a pattern. "Contain it!" the commander shouted. "Shut down the main grid, now!" The lights died. The only sound was the hum of emergency power. Outside, the reflections froze again. For now. The science officer leaned forward, whispering, "They respond to energy. The more we use, the more they learn." So what are they? I don't know. Maybe what we become when the universe ends. The commander didn't want to believe it, but deep down, it felt true. Whatever existed beyond the lattice wasn't life. It was memory, thought, potential. When humanity had shattered the boundaries of space, they had invited it in. And now it was rewriting everything. Still, there was one faint hope. The alien fleet's last transmission, the coordinates, the message to close the path. Maybe the structure at the galactic core wasn't just a piece of the lattice. Maybe it was the failsafe, a last resort meant to reset the cycle. If they could reach it again, maybe they could undo what they had done. But to reach it, they needed power. And using power meant waking the echoes. The commander gathered the bridge crew. "We've got one chance. We restart the engines, jump to those coordinates, and end this. No delays, no hesitation. If we stay here, we die. Or worse." No one argued. They all knew the risk. The power-up sequence began. The hum of energy filled the air again, soft at first, then rising. Outside, the reflections stirred, heads lifting in eerie unison. The moment the engines reached full output, they began to move again, faster this time, converging from all directions. "Engage jump!" The ship lurched forward. The stars, or what remained of them, stretched into lines of light, but instead of space, the jump tunnel was filled with faces, endless and flickering. Whispered voices filled the cabin, overlapping, pleading, angry, familiar. Then they were through. The vigilant dawn emerged near what was left of the galactic core. The great structure still floated there, but it was cracked, bleeding light like a dying star. The alien fleet was gone, their ships reduced to dust. Only one remained, a massive vessel drifting near the structure, dark and motionless. The commander ordered a docking maneuver. As they approached, the ship's lights flickered back to life on their own, as if waiting for them. Inside, the corridors were empty, but the walls pulsed faintly with light, the same pattern they'd seen in the lattice itself. It wasn't metal anymore. It was alive. At the center of the alien vessel, they found something unexpected, a chamber filled with floating spheres of light, memories, recordings, thoughts preserved for eons. As the commander reached out, one of them flared, projecting an image. A being appeared, tall, luminous, speaking in a voice that resonated like a chorus. "You should not have returned. The seal is broken." The end moves through thought, not time. The commander took a step forward. "Tell us how to stop it." The light dimmed. "You cannot stop what has already begun. You can only choose who remains when it ends." Before the commander could respond, the chamber shook violently. The structure outside was collapsing, drawing everything toward the rift that had reformed in its core. The voice faded, replaced by a whisper that echoed inside their minds. "One chance, one choice." The commander looked up at the swirling light outside, the rift that had once destroyed a galaxy now calling them again. And from its center something new was emerging, smaller than before, but brighter, sharper, and moving straight toward them. "Prepare all systems," the commander said quietly. "We're not done yet." Outside, the rift opened wider, and for the first time, something human stepped out of it. The air in the alien chamber grew heavy as the light from the rift poured through the fractured walls. The surviving crew shielded their eyes, watching as the figure stepped out of the radiant storm. At first it looked human, tall, solid, familiar in shape, but the light within it pulsed like a living heartbeat. The commander stared, unsure whether they were seeing a person or an echo of one. Then, as the glow dimmed, the face became clear. It was them, not a reflection this time, not one of the eerie duplicates from the dark void. This was real, or as real as anything could be now. The other version of the commander looked worn, their armor scorched, their eyes filled with exhaustion and quiet understanding. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the dying structure filled the air. The double finally broke the silence. "You made it further than I thought." The commander raised their weapon slowly. "Who are you?" The other smiled faintly. "You already know. I'm what you became when you chose to survive." A chill ran through the crew. The two figures faced each other, mirror and shadow, the weight of a million choices hanging between them. The other continued, "When the lattice broke, it split us, Across time, across possibility. You came here to stop it. I came here to control it. And now only one of us can decide how the story ends. Outside, the rift pulsed, growing brighter. The ship's sensors screamed warnings, registering gravitational distortions strong enough to tear entire planets apart. The alien structure was unraveling, threads of light breaking free like the veins of a dying star. The science officer whispered, "If that rift expands again, it won't just destroy the galaxy. It'll erase everything connected to it, including us." The commander's voice hardened. "Then we close it, for good this time." The other version tilted their head. "You still think you can close something that was never meant to be closed? That rift isn't an enemy. It's evolution. It's what comes next. You call this evolution?" The commander shot back. "Look around you. Everything it touches dies. Or worse." The other sighed softly. "No, everything it touches becomes?" They stepped closer, the air crackling between them. "I've seen what's beyond that gate. It's not destruction, it's understanding. Humanity feared what it couldn't control, so it built weapons, fleets, dreadnoughts. But this is the only thing that ever offered freedom. The lattice wasn't a prison. It was a warning. We were meant to open it." The commander felt anger rise in their chest, not just at the words, but at how familiar they sounded. Because deep down, some part of them agreed. The science officer interrupted, voice trembling. "If we're going to act, we need to do it now. The structure's collapsing. Energy readings are spiking. We've got maybe 3 minutes before it all goes." Both versions of the commander turned to the glowing heart of the rift, where light and shadow twisted together like a living storm. The crew looked between them, unsure who to follow. Finally, the real commander spoke. "You said there's a choice. Maybe there is, but it's not yours alone." They turned to the crew. "Humanity has fought, bled, and nearly vanished because of this. Maybe we don't deserve to decide what the universe becomes, but we can choose what we stand for before it ends." The other version shook their head slowly. "You still think in endings. That's your mistake." Before anyone could move, the double raised a hand. A burst of light shot forward, throwing the commander across the chamber. The crew scattered as energy arcs ripped through the air. Consoles exploded, and the walls groaned under the strain. The commander hit the floor hard, vision swimming. They could feel the pulse of the rift through the metal, beating like a second heart. Their counterpart approached, eyes burning with fierce conviction. "You don't have to fight it. You could come with me. Together we could lead what comes next." The commander forced themselves up, gripping the side of the console. "You're not leading anything. You're just letting it use you." They lunged forward, striking the control panel. The alien symbols flashed red, responding to their command. Outside, the surviving human ships locked onto the rift's coordinates, their weapons charging one last time. The other version's face hardened. "You can't stop it." "You'll destroy yourself." "Maybe," the commander said, "but not without giving humanity a chance." They opened a comm link to the fleet. "All ships, target the rift. Fire everything you have. This is our last stand." Across the void, 500,000 dreadnoughts responded. The beams converged, white light spearing into the heart of the rift. The alien structure shuddered violently, energy surging in chaotic waves. The second commander tried to stop them, but the feedback tore through the chamber, knocking both to the ground. The sound was deafening, like the scream of the universe itself. Light and shadow twisted, folding inward. The walls broke apart. The rift pulsed brighter, then began to shrink, collapsing under its own gravity. The commander struggled to their feet, watching as their other self reached out, half in pleading, half in defiance. For a brief second, the two locked eyes. There was no hatred, no rage, just understanding. They were the same person, after all, split by one impossible decision. Then the light took them both. Silence followed. When the crew opened their eyes, the chamber was gone. The ship drifted alone in open space, surrounded by stars once more. The rift had vanished, the core restored, but the great structure was no longer there. Only fragments glimmering faintly in the starlight. The science officer checked the readings. "The gravitational field is stable." "The anomaly's gone. Where's the commander?" someone asked quietly. No one answered. The crew searched the wreckage for hours, but there was no sign of them. No body, no trace. only the faint echo of a signal repeating in the distance. It wasn't in any known frequency. When they played it back, it sounded almost like a voice. I made the choice. The message repeated once, then faded into static. The surviving fleet limped back toward human space, carrying the weight of what they'd done. The rift was gone, but the stars were different somehow. The light they gave off shimmered slightly, as if the universe itself had been rewritten. Months later, explorers at the edge of the Perseus Arm detected something strange. A faint distortion, small, harmless, but with the same energy signature as the lattice. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, and inside it a shape moved. Not alien. Human. It looked out at them for a moment, eyes glowing faintly with starlight. Then it vanished. Back on Earth, transmissions began appearing on old channels that hadn't been active in decades. Voices whispering fragments of messages, words spoken in perfect human tone but from nowhere known. Scientists dismissed them as interference until one phrase repeated across every transmission. "We're still here." The people listened, unsure whether it was comfort or warning. The stars were calm now, the galaxy silent again. Humanity had survived, rebuilt, and moved on. But sometimes, when the night sky was especially clear, pilots swore they could see a faint shimmer, like the edge of a doorway half closed. And if you listened closely enough, you could almost hear it, the sound of 2 heartbeats, still echoing through the dark. That was the legacy of the last battle, the reminder that humanity's strength had never been its weapons or ships. It was its refusal to stop reaching, even when the universe itself pushed back. But far beyond the reach of any telescope, past the edge of mapped space, the light flickered again. Just once, and in that flicker, something stirred, a silhouette watching, waiting and smiling faintly as if remembering how it all began. Then it turned toward the unseen horizon, and the darkness whispered back, the end, or perhaps the beginning. The silence that followed the final battle became part of history itself. For the first time in decades, the stars were still. No rifts, no anomalies, no echoes of forgotten voices. Humanity drifted back into calm after surviving something no one had words for. The war that began with the burning of a single colony had ended somewhere far beyond reason, somewhere past fear. But even peace carried its scars. When the surviving Dreadnoughts returned to Sol, they were met with silence. There were no victory parades, no songs of triumph, only quiet awe. People had expected to see heroes, but the faces that stepped off those ships were pale and distant. Eyes that had seen the edge of existence and come back changed. The fleet that had once been 500,000 strong was now a shadow of its former self. But the galaxy still existed, and so did hope. The rebuilt council gathered soon after the fleet's return. Every government, every colony, every surviving leader joined in one vast transmission that stretched from the heart of Earth to the outer rings. The central message was simple. We are still here. Those 4 words spread faster than any weapon humanity had ever built. They became the anthem of a civilization reborn. Still, not everything could be explained. The data recovered from the Vigilant Dawn was incomplete. Energy readings that defied physics, coordinates that pointed to nowhere, and a final voice recording that no one could trace. Some claimed it belonged to the commander, others said it was a distortion created by the collapse. Whatever the truth was, the message always ended the same way. Keep reaching. Decades passed. The galaxy began to heal. Colonies were rebuilt on the edges of space, where the scars of war had once burned bright. The lattice became myth, a legend told to children about the time humanity reached too far and touched something it couldn't understand. But for those who had survived it, the memory was still sharp, alive in the quiet moments when the stars flickered just a little too much. The science officer from the Vigilant Dawn, now older and gray, became one of the chief architects of the new exploration fleet. She worked tirelessly to rebuild the technology that had nearly destroyed them, but this time with purpose, not pride. Her new project wasn't a weapon, it was a bridge. The Horizon Gate, she called it, designed to explore safely beyond known space without tearing reality apart. It was humanity's way of learning, not conquering. One quiet evening, she stood in the observatory on Luna, looking out toward the distant stars. The horizon shimmered faintly, just a flicker, barely visible to the naked eye. For a moment, she thought it was her imagination. Then she heard it, a soft hum like an echo carried on the wind of space. She smiled to herself. "You'd still be out there, wouldn't you?" she whispered. The commander's story became legend. Some said they died saving the galaxy. Others believed they merged with the rift, becoming part of whatever lay beyond. The truth no one knew, but sometimes explorers on deep space missions reported strange readings, faint signals carrying fragments of human code, messages too deliberate to be random. A few claimed they heard a voice in the static, calm and steady, giving coordinates that led nowhere known. What those coordinates pointed to remained a mystery, until one day, nearly a century later, a deep space probe detected an anomaly. It wasn't dangerous this time. It was faint, stable, and perfectly spherical, a bubble of light suspended between stars. When scientists decoded the signal it emitted, it wasn't alien at all. It was human speech, simple and direct. "It's safe to come closer." The discovery reignited humanity's curiosity. For years, teams studied it, debated it, feared it. Eventually, they sent a manned ship, the Aurora, to investigate. As it approached the sphere, the readings stayed calm. No gravity spikes, no radiation, no signs of distortion. Just light, steady and soft, pulsing like a heartbeat. Inside the light, they found something unexpected. A structure, ancient yet familiar, made from both alien and human materials. And floating within it was a figure, asleep or at peace, surrounded by drifting motes of light. The sensors confirmed what no one wanted to believe. The DNA was human. They didn't disturb it. They just watched. The sphere seemed to protect the figure, keeping it perfectly preserved, as if waiting for something. Or someone. The captain of the Aurora ordered a beacon placed nearby, a silent marker for all travelers who might pass through. The inscription was simple. "Here rests the one who reached too far, so we could reach further." Years turned into centuries. Humanity spread again, slower, wiser, more patient. The memory of the war faded into legend, then into quiet faith. The Horizon Gates opened pathways to other galaxies, and explorers carried the same words into the unknown. We are still here, but deep beyond the rim of mapped space, in the darkness between galaxies, the sphere still floated. One day, its light began to pulse faster, almost like breathing. A shadow moved within it, faint at first, then clearer. The figure inside opened its eyes. There was no fear there, only calm. The stars reflected in their gaze, countless and eternal. Somewhere, far away, humanity had begun another journey, unaware that the one who had once saved them had awakened. They looked toward the distant Milky Way, its spiral arms glittering faintly like a memory. A voice echoed softly in their mind. Not alien, not divine, just familiar, like an old friend. The lattice was never meant to hold you back. It was meant to show you the way forward. The figure smiled faintly. The light around them began to expand, reaching across the dark like a ripple in still water. It wasn't destruction this time. It was connection, a bridge between what was and what could be. Back on Earth, telescopes recorded a sudden burst of light from the edge of known space. It wasn't a supernova or any natural phenomenon. It was structured, rhythmic, almost musical. The scientists who studied it found a repeating pattern woven into the data, binary, simple, deliberate. When decoded, it formed one last message. I found it. No one ever learned exactly what it was, a new world, another universe, or maybe the truth beyond all things. But the message spread through the networks of humanity, stirring the same feeling that had carried them through war and silence alike. Wonder. Generations later, when children learned about the Great War and the Lattice, they didn't see it as a story of destruction anymore. They saw it as the moment humanity stopped running from the unknown and started listening to it. They understood that reaching beyond the stars wasn't about conquering or surviving. It was about becoming part of something larger. And so, the story ended where it began, with light in the dark, and a single human voice carried across the endless sea of stars. Somewhere out there, a ripple moved again, soft and endless, whispering across time and space. We are still here. And for the first time in all of history, the universe whispered back.